So, what is the dismissive avoidant attachment styles relationship repeat? And what does the term actually even mean? Well, this is something that we've been discussing in the personal development school for the last 4 years or so, really talking about how our subconscious mind essentially has a comfort zone. And your subconscious mind ultimately is the one running the show. So it is responsible for your thoughts, your beliefs, your emotions, your actions and behaviors, or your habits on a daily basis and takes up 95 to 97% of all of this. Whereas your conscious mind takes up 3 to 5% of all of this. And your subconscious mind, the one really running the show, is ultimately looking for safety. It's looking for survival. And what this means is that even if you have painful habits that, are causing you emotional distress, let's say, for example, that one of your habits or maladaptive coping mechanisms is to get really angry and raise your voice at people you love and then feel badly about it later. Well, even if your conscious mind has the ability to analyze, oh, this is causing me pain, your subconscious mind says, well, we've been surviving, so this is still working. Hence, why when we have bad habits, it can be so difficult to break them because unless we're actually targeting the subconscious mind, it's difficult to do so. So, your conscious mind can say, I want to stop doing this or being this way. And your subconscious mind will often just go back to the same patterns. So, how does this apply to the relationship area of life and particularly dismissive avoidance? Well, because dismissive avoidant attachment styles tend to end up investing in the same types of people over and over again. And what all of us will find, irrespective of what our attachment style is that we tend to be attracted to and invest in people over the long run who most often represent the relationship we have to ourselves. In other words, if you are a specific individual who grew up, let's say, for example, you are a dismissive avoidant, you grew up in a household where there's a lot of emotional neglect, we essentially internalize that dynamic and we become the greatest emotional neglectors of ourselves if we're a dismissive avoidant. And so, what is done to us, we do to ourselves. And then the third step on the journey is that we are also attracted to exactly those same types of dynamics in our relationships to other people. Now, you might be asking, but dismissive avoidants don't attract neglectful people. But I want us to take a closer look because you might actually be surprised. What often happens in a relationship with a dismissive avoidant attachment style is that they end up in a relationship with somebody who projects what they think the dismissive avoidant needs. In other words, let's say it's an anxious, preoccupied attachment style. I had this client once, and I'll tell you this story because I think it really sort of describes this very well. She was one of the most lovely people I had ever met. Very smart, very kind, very thoughtful, had a heart of gold. And she was in a typical anxious avoidant trap with her partner. And her partner had been together for a couple of years, and they were really in that sort of power struggle stage of the relationship. Well, they got in an argument, and the dismissive avoidant said, hey, I really need space. I just need to process. And she said, okay. So she went home and she got home and she thought to herself, and this is what she told me. She thought to herself, you know what? If I was hurt right now and I said I needed space, what I would really need is for somebody to let me know that they love me and they care about me and to do something kind. And so she cooked a meal, she wrote a letter, and she went and dropped it off at his home and rang his doorbell to surprise him about an hour or so, a couple hours after the argument. And in this moment, right, she's thinking of what she would need and then trying to give that to her partner. But the reality is, oftentimes when dismissive avoidants are in conflict, they actually need space and time in order to be able to process their emotions. So, funnily enough, what's often happening in relationship dynamics is a lot of times dismissive avoidant attachment styles' actual needs are being neglected by their partners because their partners don't often see and understand them in their own uniqueness. Hence, this actually is like this thread that follows all the way through. Their true needs are neglected as children. There's this lack of attunement. Then they are not attuned to themselves. And then they often actually end up in relationships with people who are still not exactly attuned to their true needs and have a hard time as seeing the dismissive avoidant as the unique individual that they are, needing exactly what they need. And the funny part is we often see in these anxious avoidant trap cycles that DAs end up in those types of relationship dynamics. Now, there's more to this, right? Dismissive avoidants often have this big shame wound. They're often investing in relationship dynamics where sometimes people can be a bit more harsh or critical of them. And it reignites this whole shame wound. So the relationship repeat means that our relationships are on repeat. We don't notice it because, and it's always the most common and most serious ones, right? And it's not all of them, but you're going to see this really strong thread, this really strong parallel between how your childhood caregivers shaped your internal world, how that then determines your internal world and the relationship to yourself, and then how you end up investing in people who mirror the same cycle back to you, but you don't realize because the form is changing, right? People are neglecting your needs in different ways. People are shaming you in different ways. But the actual root of it is it the neglect, the not being seen, not being understood, or not being heard, or the dynamic of not being in a position where you feel like you're truly accepted are all there. Now, I want to be really clear about this too. Like a lot of people who date dismissive avoidants are lovely people, right? And they're doing their absolute best. But because dismissive avoidants are such a unique attachment style with such different needs as a general rule compared to other attachment style dynamics, often those things go misunderstood. And if the dismissive avoidant could just be better at actually understanding their own needs and communicating them and articulating them in healthier and more effective ways, they would often have partners who would adapt and show up for that and do that work with them. But because you felt misunderstood as a dismissive avoidant, it's so hard for you to actually understand yourself, right? So some of the big dynamics you'll see is the repeat of feeling misunderstood, unseen or invisible or neglected in different ways, like your true needs are neglected, not feeling like truly attuned to for your uniqueness, feeling unsafe, perhaps criticized or not good enough or incapable. And often these dynamics are like, hey, you felt that way in childhood, you become that way in relationship to self, you see these same sorts of dynamics in your external relationships. So what we have to understand here is that trauma from childhood, it often conditions the relationship to yourself. And then your subconscious wants to keep these relationship dynamics alive because even though they're painful, you're surviving. So it must be working according to your subconscious mind. And I want to be clear that we can recondition all of these patterns, right? We're not born with these patterns. We can actually recondition them using the same sorts of tools that were conditioned into us as individuals. And if you are a dismissive avoidant or you're a different attachment style listening to this, you can actually recondition what is called your relationship shadow, okay, which is the term used to really describe this in a very short period of time by isolating these traits and plugging them into reprogramming tools. If you want to check out a course for this for free for 7 days, it's only like an hour and a half, gives you all the tools you need to know to be able to recondition this pattern and start actually healing the relationship to yourself that is essentially your internalized wounding from childhood. And that will actually change your subconscious comfort zone of what you're attracted to. So it can help you be attracted to healthier people. If you want to go through that, it's more than enough time to get through the course. I'll put the link down below for you to access it for free for 7 days. And it is called the Shadow Work Course. Okay. It's all about increasing your feelings of self worth. There's a whole section on it all about the relationship shadow. It's very powerful, very deep, and it'll give you all the tools you need to know to change this set point once and for all so that you can be healing this childhood wounding and be attracting people who are a better match for the higher expression of yourself. So I hope this makes sense in terms of the relationship repeat. Thank you so much for listening and for watching. If you have any more questions about this down below, please let me know. Questions about the course, questions about anything. I'd love to hear from you. And I'm curious to hear what your relationship shadow is, what your relationship repeat cycle tends to be. And what your attachment style is accordingly. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here. If you're enjoying this channel, please give me a thumbs up. I would super appreciate it. It helps the algorithm. And thank you. I will see you tomorrow.